of a bustling city, where the neon lights cast long shadows on the streets below, there stood a small apartment building, its windows dark and its corridors empty. It was here, amidst the eerie silence of the night, that James found himself beginning anew, hoping to leave behind the shadows of his past and start afresh in a city where no one knew his name. James had always been haunted by the ghosts of his past, memories of loss and regret that clung to him like a shadow, following him wherever he went. But when he moved into apartment 13, he never could have imagined the darkness that awaited him within its walls. At first, James dismissed the strange occurrences as nothing more than figments of his imagination. The lost keys, the open door, the eerie noises in the kitchen. But as the days turned into weeks and the incidents grew more frequent, he began to suspect that something far more sinister was at play. It was late one night when James first encountered the entity that lurked within his apartment. He had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling in the darkness, when he heard the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway outside his door. At first, he dismissed it as one of his neighbors returning home late from work, but when the footsteps stopped outside his door and the handle began to turn, he knew he was not alone. Shaken but determined to prove to himself that he was not losing his mind, James began to investigate the history of his apartment building. It was then that he discovered the truth. Apartment 13 had a dark past, one that had been all but forgotten by those who now called it home. Decades ago, a young woman had lived in apartment 13, her life consumed by tragedy and despair. It was said that she had taken her own life within its walls, her spirit trapped for eternity in the place where she had suffered so greatly. Armed with this knowledge, James confronted the entity that haunted his apartment, pleading with her to leave him in peace. But the entity refused to be banished, her presence growing stronger with each passing day. As the weeks turned into months, James found himself consumed by fear and despair, his once hopeful outlook on life overshadowed by the darkness that surrounded him. And then, one fateful night, the entity made her presence known in the most terrifying way possible. As James lay in bed, unable to sleep for fear of what lurked in the shadows, he heard the sound of knocking at his door. At first, he ignored it, hoping that whoever was on the other side would simply go away. But as the knocking grew louder and more insistent, he knew he had no choice but to answer. James opened the door with trembling hands, feeling his heart pounding in his chest as he braced himself for what lay beyond. In the darkness, he saw a spectral figure bathed in moonlight. The entity's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. James was paralyzed with fear as the entity stared at him, piercing his soul and causing him to shudder. He attempted to speak and ask what she wanted, but his voice was caught in his throat and lost amidst the suffocating darkness that surrounded him. The entity, sensing his fear, began to move closer, her movements slow and deliberate. With each step, the air grew colder, the temperature dropping to a bone-chilling degree that sent a shiver through James's entire body. As she extended her hand towards James, he was overcome by a sudden and intense feeling of fear, his instincts urging him to run away. However, he found himself unable to move, frozen in place, as the entity's cold touch grazed his skin. And then, in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss, the entity spoke. Her words were like whispers in the wind, carrying with them a sense of ancient wisdom and unfathomable sorrow. "You cannot escape me, James," she said, her voice echoing in the darkness. "I have been here long before you, and I will be here long after you are gone." With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, James realized the truth. He was trapped, ensnared in the clutches of a darkness far greater than anything he had ever known. And as the entity's grip tightened around him, he knew that his fate was sealed in the shadows of apartment 13. As the entity's icy grip tightened around him, James felt a surge of desperation welling up inside him. With trembling hands, he reached out to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from me?" he pleaded, his eyes locked with hers in a silent battle of wills. The entity regarded him with an inscrutable gaze, her eyes betraying no emotion as she spoke. "I seek only to exist," she whispered, her voice echoing in the darkness, "to linger in the shadows, unseen and forgotten by the world." James's heart sank at her words, realizing that he was powerless to help her. But still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to her presence, something that stirred a sense of unease deep within him. Desperate for answers, James pressed on, asking her about his own life, about the secrets he had buried deep within his soul. And to his astonishment, the entity knew them all: the pain, the regret, the darkness that had haunted him for so long. It was then that James realized the truth. The entity was not just a figment of his imagination, but a reflection of his inner demons, a manifestation of the darkness that had consumed him for so long. With a newfound sense of clarity, James made a decision. He would leave the apartment behind along with the darkness that had plagued him for so long. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, he gathered his belongings and stepped out into the world, leaving the entity behind in the shadows where she belonged. After 10 years, James can still feel her presence lingering in the corners of his mind. She is a constant reminder of the darkness that once consumed him. Although he has moved on with his life, he knows that she will always be there, waiting for the moment when he least expects it to remind him of the darkness that still lingers within. Immerse yourself in a world where the shadows whisper and the unknown beckons. Our playlist, Horror Stories in English, invites you to explore spine-chilling tales that will send shivers down your spine and keep you on the edge of your seat. From haunted houses to eerie encounters, each story is carefully crafted to ignite your imagination and leave you craving more. If you enjoy our horror stories, remember to like and share the video. Don't forget to subscribe to Kreepy Corner for the newest movie updates. Thanks for watching.